Thank you, Sheffield, and thanks to all the members of the Atlanta History Center and to the trustees of the Livingston Lecture Fund for making this possible and making it possible for me to come and visit again here in Atlanta, this beautiful jewel of a city. What a pleasure it is to be here, especially at the Atlanta History Center, so devoted as it is to the study of the history of this city, of the state of Georgia, and of the United States. It is great to be back again. I wonder if we could have the lights down a bit, because we have some pictures to see. Looking back over 20 years, Alexander Stewart Webb declared that the Battle of Gettysburg was and is now throughout the world known to be the Waterloo of the rebellion. Well, certainly Alex Webb had earned the right to speak with authority about Gettysburg. He was 26 when the Civil War broke out in 1861. And even though this grandson of a Minuteman at Bunker Hill was only 6 years out of West Point, he rocketed up the ladder of promotion to brigadier general just a week before the Union and Confederate armies collided in their brutal three-day hammering at Gettysburg. And it fell to Webb in particular to command the Union brigade which absorbed the spear point of the battle's climax, the great charge made by the rebel divisions commanded by George E. Pickett. Webb would survive Gettysburg and a nearly fatal wound to the head a year after, and eventually go on to become the president of the City College of New York. But in his memory, the fattest ring in the tree would always be Gettysburg. This 3 days contest, Webb announced, was a constant recurrence of scenes of self-sacrifice, and especially on the part of all engaged on the third and last day. Still, for those of us 150 years later, it might just be possible to wonder if Alexander Webb was suffering from a touch of memory myopia, inflating the risk-all experiences of his youth under the pressures of peacetime middle age. The name of Gettysburg is still powerful enough to register in the recognition of even the most reluctant grade schooler as a big-box event in American history. But really now, does it deserve to stand beside Waterloo? Except, of course, that it does. Call Gettysburg, if you like, the hinge of fate, or the high watermark of the Confederacy, or the beginning of the end. But Gettysburg really was the last solid chance the breakaway southern states, which made up the Confederate States of America, had of winning their war and their independence. In the first 10 months of the Civil War, from April 1861 to February 1862, nearly everything seemed to go the way of the Confederacy. 11 southern states of the American Union announced their secession from the Union. They wrote a constitution. They elected a president, Jefferson Davis, and their hastily assembled army defeated an equally hastily assembled United States Army at Bull Run in Virginia. But in the early spring of 1862, the current began to swerve. Union armies and the Union Navy reconquered all but a few stretches of the Mississippi River Valley and reoccupied western Tennessee. In the east, Robert E. Lee led his ragtag Confederate forces, the Army of Northern Virginia, to one victory after another over their opposite number, the Union Army of the Potomac. But the victories were all won on Virginia soil and enfeebled the Virginia economy even as they defended it. Lee knew better than any Southerner that the Confederacy's resources were too limited to keep fending off the Confederacy's enemies indefinitely. Only by carrying the war into the Union states and only by leveraging the war weariness of the Union voting public into peace negotiations could the Confederacy hope to win. But this was by no means a far-fetched hope. In the fall of 1862, dissension over President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had caused unhappy voters in New York and New Jersey to install Democratic governors there. A new round of anti-war Democratic candidates were due to run in the fall 1863 governor's elections in Ohio and Pennsylvania. If those states also turned against the war, they could force Abraham Lincoln either to begin peace talks or to resign. So Lee's army, some 85,000 strong, struck northward in the first week of June, crossing the Potomac River and sweeping in a long arc up the Cumberland Valley until his advance guard was perched on the Susquehanna River, overlooking the Pennsylvania state capital of Harrisburg. Lee's real goal, however, was not Harrisburg. What Lee really hoped was to lure the Army of the Potomac northwards after him, and as soon as the Yankees had strung themselves out on the roads beyond their ability to help each other, to turn and smash the straggling parts of the Union Army piece by piece. And even if all he did was to lead the Union Army of the Potomac a merry chase around central Pennsylvania, he could simply let the politics of disheartenment take their own course thereafter. It nearly worked. The morale of the army was never more favorable for offensive or defensive operations, wrote one Virginian. Victory will inevitably attend our arms in any collision with the enemy. True to Lee's expectation, the 95,000 men of the Army of the Potomac, panting and uncertain, set off after Lee. And as soon as Lee was satisfied that they had frantically marched themselves into disarray, Lee ordered a concentration of his own army at Gettysburg, ready to pounce on the first parts of the Army of the Potomac, which obligingly wandered within his reach. But the lead elements of the Army of the Potomac got to Gettysburg first. And when Lee's own advance units arrived there on July 1st, they found Union troops holding on to the ground there for dear life. True, there were not many of them, only 3 of the Army of the Potomac's 7 infantry corps. And on July 1st, Lee's army was able to clear them out of the town of Gettysburg. But at the end of the day, the Union soldiers were still holding a strategic height south of the town, Cemetery Hill. Lee assumed that he could wait for daylight to finish the job. But by the morning of July 2nd, 3 more infantry corps of the Army of the Potomac had raced to Gettysburg, and Lee was forced to mount a bloody and ambitious assault on a series of Union positions: the Peach Orchard, the Wheat Field, Little Round Top, whose bland and harmless names belied the vicious character of the fighting that raged around them. Lee's attack on July 2nd came within an ace of succeeding. So on the next day, he launched what he assumed would be the knockdown blow for a Union army already clearly on the ropes. Lee sent 3 divisions of rebel infantry straight at the vital nape of the Union Army's neck, just behind Cemetery Hill. The rebels, indeed, punched holes in the Union defenses, but couldn't hold them. Amazed at the failure of his gambit and appalled at the cost in lives, Lee ordered a retreat back across the Potomac. Just on those terms alone, Gettysburg was an unmistakable sign of Confederate disaster. The campaign is a failure, and the worst failure that the South has ever made, wrote one Confederate survivor. No blow has been so telling against us. A soldier in the 11th Georgia wrote his mother that the Army is brokenhearted, and now don't care which way the war closes, for we have suffered very much. across the South.